Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror film from Taiwan, Mandarin language English subs, released in the year 2022, directed by Rob Jabaz, and this film is called The Sadness. So The Sadness is set in the city. You have a married couple who on this particular morning are apart. The husband has stayed at home while the wife's at work, but then the husband looks on the news and he sees that the Alvin virus, which is this new virus that has taken the world by storm, has now inflicted great damage in the city. Basically, the people infected with this virus turn into maniacs who can't control their violent and sexual impulses. So the city has gone to absolute hell, and now the husband has to try and track his wife down in order to escape. But unfortunately, that's going to be easier said than done, because now it's going to be a fight for survival amongst all the chaos. So whether or not they can be reunited is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on The Sadness. This film is nasty. Be very careful. If you are not an experienced extreme horror fan, you are going to come away from this movie absolutely mentally scarred. Now, coming into this movie, I had hesitations. You guys know me. With films that are overhyped, you get that sense of anticipation that it's going to be a really, really good film, but it doesn't come anywhere near it. And those expectations are not met, and you can trick yourself into thinking that it's a bad film. So that was my anticipation coming into this movie. Now, as far as Taiwan is concerned, then I don't really know too much about them in far as the cinema industry is concerned. When you think of Asian cinema, you think of Japan, South Korea, but you don't really think of Taiwan. So when I heard that this Taiwanese film, The Sadness, was out and everyone was talking about it, I thought, okay, well, I'm really excited because I love the zombie/infected subgenre, but I also have that hesitation based on previous experiences, where you set the bar at a really unreasonable level. And so I thought that was going to be the case with The Sadness, which is the reason why I was so surprised that this is one of the rare occasions where it really matched the hype. Now, this is a movie that is said to be brutal, and I will say that it really nailed the brief as far as extremity is concerned. This movie was nasty, it was cruel, it had me cringing quite considerably, it had me shocked. And that's something that is a rarity these days. It's few and far between where a movie really hits you emotionally as far as the violence is concerned. And the reason why it hits you emotionally is because the movie understands what it is to create very realistic and likable characters. This is a movie that doesn't need to go into a sob story with the backstories of these people to actually gain that melodramatic sympathy. This is a film where these two people, these two main characters, are going about their everyday business, but they're doing things in a realistic way where you feel as though they could be your friends. And because they could be your friends, you don't want to see them eaten, you don't want to see them torn apart, so it creates a lot of suspense. And when you've got suspense mixed with absolutely horrific violence, you understand what the repercussions are if they're caught. And so you know that there is a high level of threat, and this is something that was very relevant in the French movie Inside. Now, I think Inside's a little bit better than The Sadness, but what Inside and The Sadness possess is that sense of what's at stake, the sense of urgency. You better not get caught because the things that will happen to you are absolutely ghastly. And so this movie does, the draw card is on the gore, and I will say the gore effects were phenomenal. It was absolutely disgusting in some instances. And the movie does have a lot of sexual violence, so be very, very careful of that. And just when you feel as though the director, Rob Jabaz, is not going to go over the line, he goes over the line. And when you realise that he's gone over the line, the very first instance of shocking violence, then all bets are off. You don't know how far he's going to go, so what is going to happen to each particular character? And that creates that sense of unpredictability. And the unpredictable nature that this movie has creates that suspense mixed in with those really likeable characters. The movie does have a psychological effect. And that psychological effect, combining with the extreme level of violence, I just thought it created a really sad sense of hopelessness. And this is a hopelessness that is relevant in today's society. We don't suffer from the Alvin virus, but the coronavirus. Once the coronavirus took hold, it made people act in very unreasonable ways. And although this is a more exaggerated version, it still had that relatable quality in that we've gone through a pandemic and we've seen some really unreasonable behaviour. And this movie, I thought, was playing off that, although it was taking definitely down a much more horror sort of realm. But it has that relatability to the viewer. And so I thought that was really, really well done. I really like the aspect of the Alvin virus. I'm not going to give too much away, but it actually creates a little bit of creativity in a very generic subgenre of the zombie slash infected. I thought it was really smart. There was a little bit of exposition thrown in that I actually thought made this really creative and actually really cool. And so the movie goes in wanting to make a zombie slash infected, but it wasn't recycling things that it's clearly inspired by. It is inspired to make this film based on the fact that it is zombie slash infected, but it wants to create a little bit of creativity and a heartbeat of its own. And I definitely feel as though Rob Jabaz created that. And so this is a film that the acting was very decent. It didn't require, melodramatic performances. It just gives you, as I said, because you like these people, you really fear for them when the all hell breaks loose. And so there were moments that I thought were incredibly scary. Just the makeup effects of the infected, and the infected actually talk in this film. And so that's all I'm going to give you on the creativity to these infected. But what happens is just really cruel and nasty. And so the whole film just has a vibe of, just pure evil and just a lot of cruelty. And this is a reflection of society and how cruel society can be. But as I said, this is definitely an extreme horror film. So I have to stress that there is a lot of gore. There is really brutal and nasty violence. And it's unforgiving. It doesn't make any apologies, and it's definitely aimed at the extreme horror crowd. And so that was something of a breath of fresh air. It shows that extreme horror is not dead. There are people out there who are willing to push the limits as far as human depravity is concerned. And some of the scenes you just have to see to believe, just sheer depravity at its absolute finest. There were moments that made me laugh in a very sickened sort of way. And so it's definitely a movie that you don't want to watch with someone who you deem as sane, because they might look at you in a very different way. And I haven't had this feeling since I watched the French Extreme in their glory days. This is definitely a step in the right direction. And if this movie is anything to go by, Taiwanese horror is in very, very good hands. So I really liked the ending. I thought it was really, really hard hitting, and it stays true to the very cruel tone that the movie possesses from start to finish. So if you like extreme horror films, The Sadness is definitely one I would say check out. Emotionally, it's just as damaging as it is visually, and so that, I believe, is the reason why I would say definitely go out there and check out The Sadness. But I have to stress, if you are not a fan of extreme horror, if you're a fan of Friday the 13th or Freddy Krueger, this movie is going to mentally scar you forever. But if you love movies such as Inside and Martyrs, then The Sadness is definitely a worthy addition of those movies. So overall, I was really knocked away by this movie. I was really surprised, and as a result, I'm going to give The Sadness 4.5 stars. All right, guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.